So that was what our student union sabbatical officers had to say about it. So the actual wording of the referendum was the student union should actively encourage students of Royal Holloway to complete the National Student Survey, yes or no. So after hearing those results, obviously the student body largely voted yes. Do you guys think, this was a question with the interview, do you guys think that the way the question was worded had anything to do with the results?
The way the question's worded, no, but the way the page was set out with all the information, yes. Because last year the question was the other way round, so all the information followed that, and it just seemed very confusing on what you were actually answering. Which question?
When I looked at the page itself, the question is very complicated, overly complicated for the question it needs to be. So you could have said something along the lines of, should we maintain the NSS boycott, or do we want to have an NS boycott, or boycott or no boycott? The way that it's written is
lengthy at best.
Lengthy, I'd say so.
So what I found particularly striking about that last interview is that both of the SABs found 269 students, quite a large number of students, to have taken part in a referendum, which I'm sure any listeners out there who are listening can appreciate that out of 9,000 students, that's not actually a lot. What do you guys kind of think of that?
I think, to be fair, it's a tiny proportion. It's not even a small proportion. It's tiny compared to the amount of students that go here. And I think it's interesting because they're talking about how this is affecting third years. But out of the 200 or something people that turned up, I'd be really interested to see how many first years, people who are actually going to face direct consequences of this, considering the cap currently on uni fees is running out potentially in the next year or two. So I think for the actual people that should have been voting and the people who should have been aware of the issue, I think it was a tiny proportion and there should have been more people there.
I'd say, because I think in the interviews they acknowledged that it was less than last year, but there's a problem with advertising in both years. So this year there was barely any advertising. I don't know quite what they were talking about in their interview. I know that a friend of mine who always looks at the SU emails didn't even see they're referencing it in the email, and they told me themselves, they said, I look at every email, and I missed it. I didn't even know what day the vote was on until the day itself, and so it was very confusing in that regard. But as well, last year, the vote for it was separate from the sabbaticals and the volunteering positions. So if somebody who just wants to quickly vote for the SABs and maybe the volunteering position is going, oh, okay, well, I vote this, oh, I thought there was a referendum, if they'd even heard of it, oh, well, I guess they're not doing that anymore, then they just click off and ignore it. I think Students' Union in this regard really should have advertised it a lot more, and should have had a debate about it, because I can understand last year they're not having a debate about it because it was focusing more on sabbaticals, but this is a policy that affects the entire university, as well as affecting sort of the general discourse about students and universities nationally.
I think also, as you mentioned, the survey is just for third years, so why would a first or second year come out for a referendum that doesn't actually affect them? Which, what percentage, if the referendum were just for third years, 269 students might not be as bad, whereas because the whole university had the opportunity to vote, it does seem like a lot smaller proportion.
I think it's interesting, particularly in the interview, that they said that in hindsight that proportion that actually came to vote is large because it's difficult to engage with the entire student body. What do you kind of think of that? Because like you were talking about in the studio, you kind of said that in our first year we had the hashtag Pimp My Summer Ball, and is that what it's called?
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah, and that was for a third party independent company to come in and take over and pay for the summer ball to make it as good as possible. And Royal Holloway actually came second, which is actually amazing considering the university that came first was significantly larger in size than ours. So I think in that respect,
students will mobilise when they hear enough about it and when they want to.
I think it's all about kind of engaging with the students and kind of targeting to what they're interested in. But then on that respect, I feel like potentially that is what the university and the SU are trying to do, because if anyone who has been the new library building recently or has actually taken part in the survey, you were rewarded for participating in the survey. So I remember in our first year we were given chocolates and things. and then I think this year's it's Haribo's.
Yeah, I think it was this. Yeah, if you came and you'd filled it out, it was Haribo's they were offering to give
Isn't
you.
there free Naked and Freddo bars as well?
Yeah. So what do you guys kind of feel about that? Like, not only have they kind of the Students' Union have supported the motion to kind of advertise the NSS survey, but they're also kind of, as a university now, bribing you to do the survey.
Not cynically, not surprised. They didn't. The motion, because it was also in the interview, the motion that I proposed and my also then committee, Left Forum committee, proposed suggested that the Students' Union encouraged a boycott, as opposed to just saying, yes, we're not going to promote it, we're going to encourage a boycott as well, which was national as well. When they just sort of, Natasha put up one blog post and that was about it. And then, of course, this was very late in the day, but for example, there was an email, I'm not sure if it's the same email now, but it was an email you could go to and say, I don't want my student survey anymore. So I think I think there's an easy way they could have mobilised if they actually pushed forward. I think the same with advertising. There was no, other than a few posts and finding out on the day, most people probably didn't even know about it. And it's the same with last year as well.
We've got a tweet into the station from Lydia Painter. She says, 269 out of over 9,000 students is hardly democracy in action. There's a significant lack of publicity this year. Elections and referendums need debate and discourse in order to be representative and effective. #NSS. Thank you, Lydia. If anyone else has any contributions to make to the debate, make sure you tweet us at Insanity Radio. So one of my final questions, guys, is what do you think is like the main pro and like the main con against actually doing the survey itself?
Everyone else go first because I'm just calm.
I feel like the main pro would be that you are giving feedback to the university. Whether or not that is fully effective, you are putting your voice out there, you are being heard to some extent, it is your opportunity to speak. But a con is that it is third years only, like it's not the whole representation of the student body, and also third years are gone unless they're staying on for a master's.
So I have actually on the Royal Holloway website, so if you want to do any further research into this, it's all on Royal Holloway's actual website itself, and they've got a little bit of a section that kind of tells you what they've done with the previous information from other surveys. So they've introduced the undergraduate events programme. They had a dual track system, provided free ebooks for certain modules, the introduction of extra online tests for first and second year courses, and integration of Turnitin with Moodle. So if you want to see like a full list of those, that's all on their website.
I'll come to my pros and cons in a bit, but on that regard, I think, unless I'm wrong, it talks about the Emily Wilding Davison building as well, does it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've not heard anyone, I've not talked to anyone who has not got at least one criticism of it, especially in regards to student spaces, study spaces. There's about 1,500-ish study spaces for 9,000 students. It's not, I'm very scared. When I was one of the first people to go into the Emily Wilding Davison building, I was very happy. I was like, oh wow, it's amazing. And then it slowly dawned on me it was really just built to help boost our ratings, and that links into sort of the very jargonistic aspect of how NSS and all the rest of it is built in for marketisation, basically meaning university's out to make money more than it's out to educate.
Do you think that there are better ways of having your student voice heard then, rather than the National Student Survey?
Definitely. I think, for example, the Royal Statistical Society, they discredit the NSS as a good measure of teaching quality. So even at a fundamental level, the NSS is not good at all for measuring it. But correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the first and second year surveys internal? I believe they are, aren't they?
I think so.
Yeah.
So they could easily...
They're like given out during like seminars and end of lectures and things.
Well, not even that, but like because first years and second years can do their own surveys.
Yeah, there's a survey you can go and do it now.
Yeah, so they could either invent one of those for third years, or they could change the like you're talking about the sheets of paper which said how much have you learned, is it good, the seminar, etc. Have an extra page. I mean, it's pain in the it's pain, but if they want feedback from students, that's probably a better way to go than to have it connected to something that will likely change back to increasing tuition fees in the future.
I think also, especially like with trying to get more people actually involved, like having done those first year surveys and being given them at the end of like lessons and modules and things like that, obviously everyone fills it out because it's built into class time, or it's built into your time, so everyone fills one out and everyone does it, so you get a much wider pool of responses, and I think it's more fair and more accurate. So I think something like that being enforced and sort of encouraged, I think would also be more effective in actually getting a better number of students and a better response.
Definitely.
What I've kind of heard from like around campus and different lecturers, that from their point of view, they think that they're not even against the survey, but they're against the timing of the survey, with it being around this period and it being like dissertation dues or like final projects. Do you think then that the actual outcome and answers in the survey are going to reflect actual student satisfaction, or do you feel like you're catching students at a very tense time in their undergraduate degree?
Honestly, the survey, the way that it's put out, I think I can understand exactly what the teachers, lecturers and so forth are saying. But there's also the aspect of, say for example, with, you get a free Freddo bar, you get a naked bar, etc. They're either going to go into it already with a positive mindset because I'm going to get food because of this, or they just want to get it out of the way quickly. And it's a lot easier to say yes, it's great, than it is to say, oh, here are my 20 complaints that I formulated over the years. You just go, oh, I want to get this over and done with.
I think that's another thing with it being in the library. How do you kind of feel about that? Like, there is just people stood there with an iPad in the middle of the library. You kind of have to pass them to get into like books and things. Do you kind of think that people will just half-heartedly fill in the survey to kind of just get it over and done with, like you said?
I think yes, in a way, especially if it feels like it's kind of being forced onto you. It's kind of like something that just has to be done. I think it's not pitched as being like, this is your chance to really make a difference or be honest. It's much more kind of like, it's that time of year again, don't forget to do it, or it's treated more routinely than it should be. And I think that's again a problem with the marketing and stuff this year. It wasn't pitched, I think, in the right way. I think again that would have engaged more people, or people would give better answers if they could see it as a more positive, useful thing.
Perfect. So does anyone have any final comments before we go into our next song?
Tons. Well, I'd say the main reason that the new referendum came about was because fees in the NSS are being decoupled. I would say that's only because Theresa May lost her majority, and there's a sort of a craze within students to have the pro-Corbyn, pro-having reduced fees for university. I think as soon as that dies down and as soon as that becomes off the general discourse table for media and politicians, that will be coupled back again very quietly. And well, maybe I'm just being too sceptical, but I do think at some point in the future, if there's a Conservative government, they will recouple teaching excellence framework and tuition fees. And I think saying, as Clem said in the interview, if he paradoxically said, we need to, if something changes, we should change the position then, as well as it's not likely to change. I think it will change, and I think.
Thank you very much for your opinions.